Hello from Bulgaria. It's me and Hudson. Yeah. Now, today is going to be a video that might not be relevant to all of you, particularly considering our audience is mainly male and above the age of 40 from our analytics we've established. But I really want to do this video. I've been talking about it for a whole year since I had Hudson here. I want to document our experience of having a baby in Bulgaria as English, non-Bulgarian speakers, purely because I could have really done with this information when I was pregnant living here. And there's not a lot of information online. So I wanted to make this video today about our experience here. It was great. Lots of useful links to share in the description. And I won't be offended if you guys switch off at this point. I'll come into the lounge to get a little bit of quiet as Hudson's asleep. So yeah, as I've explained before in previous videos, obviously we had Hudson here in Bulgaria. We were debating. So when I was pregnant, we were living in Malta at the time. We were due to move to Bulgaria July 2020, and he was due mid-January 2021. So we were umming and ahhing because of the pandemic, because of worries about giving birth in a foreign country. You know, we'd only really stayed the odd week in Bulgaria. I was nervous, my first child, all kind of understandable, wanting to be in surrounding that you feel comfortable in. And so we was going to actually go back to the UK, live with family, have him there. But we were just assessing in that summer what this travel situation was like. And during that time, I did research about giving birth in Bulgaria, because there's a few things that were really important to me, such as trying to ensure the birth was as natural as possible. I really didn't want too much medical intervention, and I just stumbled upon a group of midwives who work out of a private hospital in SOFIA, and I thought, do you know what, these really resonate with what I would like, as in they kind of looked like they followed English guidelines. They kind of really spoke my language about providing the right environment for birth, etc, etc, and I'll go into more detail. And I thought, you know what, maybe we'll just give it a go. Maybe it would be nicer to have the baby in our home, in our house. Obviously it would have been lovely to be with family, and that wouldn't have been an issue, but then at the time there was the worry that the UK was going back into lockdowns, and we thought we don't want to be stuck in the UK for months and months. It stops Lee working on the house, and we thought, right, let's give it a go and try it in Bulgaria. So we spent the summer working on the house as much as possible. I'll throw up some shots of us or myself during pregnancy and how we got on that summer. And then it was all hands go, well, all of Lee's hands go to make that bedroom ready for the winter, because he was going to be due in mid-January, and wow, boy is it cold in mid-January. So that was the story of the sort of pregnancy of 2020. Now, I contacted Zebra Midwives, and I'm going to put all the links to these lovely ladies in the description below. They also have a YouTube channel. It is all in Bulgarian, but they've got a Facebook group as well. They translate everything into English. And I reached out to Anna, who's the head midwife there, and started chatting and said to her about my concerns, my nervousness, wanting to know how much it costs, because obviously the thought of going private would never have considered, wouldn't even think about that in the UK. And got some wonderful information back, got all their fees, and also did a bit of research as well about births in the local hospitals in the Veliko Tarnovo region. I really just wanted to get a full picture to give myself lots of options. Now, home births aren't really an option here from what I've researched. It seems like there aren't any midwives that are actually licensed to perform home births. If you do home birth, it's the responsibility of the health of you and your child falls all on you. That's what I've seen online. If anyone out there knows of anything different, I'd actually really keen to know if it has been possible here, or if I've just been sort of scared off that stuff from what I've seen. So I looked up zebra midwives, as I said, and everything that they talked about on their website and their Facebook, all the stories they'd shared of other ladies that gave birth there, was all really resonating with me. Now, there are some scare stories about giving birth in Bulgaria. I think it's because there's a high percentage of births they do episiotomies, and there was things like that I really just did not want to. I was scared of that for sure, and so I did a little bit of research with some women that had given birth in the local area. I didn't have some wonderful feedback, so I thought, well, you know what, I'm not saying that every situation's like that, but from the people that I'd spoken to, there was certainly some resentment about that. So I thought, you know what, it is expensive to go private. Spoke with family, we got support from them as well, and made the decision to go private with zebra midwives, and they work out of St. Sophia Hospital in Sofia, the main city. So it came to the point that they wanted to actually see me in person once we'd agreed to work with each other. So of course we're about a 3.5-4 hours drive from them. So every time there was a checkup, we had to do a 4-hour drive there, spend the night in a hotel, 4 hours drive the next day. So it was a lot of effort, but it was worth it. Once we'd met in person, it was really lovely to chat through how they work, all the support in terms of birth plans. Now, everything you might be familiar about birthing in your own country or certainly in the UK, it really resonated with the support you get there. So they, for example, follow the NICE guidelines in regards to birth. They 100% are really on top of knowledge around an active labour. You might want to look at spinningbabies.com. Again, I'm going to put all the links that I talk about in the bottom. So they really focus on giving you an active labour. You're moving around, you're doing everything you can to help it progress and be as natural and as progressive as possible. Now, they do have birthing, like the exercise balls there if you want to be squatting on a ball. They've got the beautiful water baths there. They've got lovely lights in the room. So they really focus a lot of their attention on the mother and the birth, which is what a lot of the hospitals potentially on the public scale don't really have that level of support. Now, that's the difference between a hospital-led birth and then a midwife-led birth. So don't get me wrong, they still work in combination with the hospital and their protocols, but they are very much have a great relationship with the obstetricians in the hospital. So they work together. They allow the midwives to lead the birth as much as possible, and they stay on the sidelines, oversee it to make sure everything's going okay, and really only step in if they need to, which was really nice for me because I felt that I was just there with Lee, with the midwives, in a nice private space, and there wasn't loads of other nurses and doctors running in and out, which can sometimes be the case on maternity wards. Another thing that I thought was really excellent about the support from zebra midwives is that they put me in touch with recommended doctors that do scans. So it was really important for them that although I could get scans done locally, they really wanted to see results and feedback from the reputable doctors that they work with in Sofia. So again, we would travel up every time I was due a scan, go and have the scan in Sofia, then have the follow-up appointment with the midwives. So they really worked around me on that basis, that they knew we were travelling far. They really encouraged us from week 36 to be living nearby. So Lee and I made the decision to take an Airbnb apartment. Actually, we found a wonderful place opposite the hospital itself, so we were walking distance from the hospital, had parking, things like that. So we spent a month across the month of December and the weeks leading up to the birth and a couple of weeks after, so we were close to the hospital for checkups and things like that. So Zebra provided an online via Zoom English support class as well. So the sort of type of antenatal class support that you get in the UK, they did that remotely, obviously because it was the pandemic, but they managed to get enough English speaking couples online to join in. So that's wonderful, and they're really looking for more English speaking couples as well to join them so they can provide more birthing education. And that was a really great, it was about 2 or 3 evenings of a couple of hours. All the couples got together on Zoom. It was nice to be in a little bit of a group, especially during the pandemic when you're kind of isolated. And Joanna, again, the head midwife there, gave some phenomenal information about Bulgaria, about hospital protocols, about what you can and can't request or ask for, and all the information around the interventions that should they be needed, and really put everyone's minds at rest. Now, I did also my own bits of research and education. I wanted to sort of give hypnobirthing a try, and I did the course, The Positive Birth Company, okay, and I'll put the links in the description. Really cheap online course, so much educational videos there, learnt so much myself about the birth, the mechanisms, everything that's going to happen. A lot of tools there around relaxation. So, you know, I'm not a person that it's not about going into a hypnotic state. I think that's really a misconception. And actually, when I said to the midwives about hypnobirthing, I think they presumed it was a case of hypnotizing yourself, and that's not what it is at all. Hypnobirthing is really around knowing the education around the birth, knowing your rights as a mother and soon to be mother, as to what's going on and what you can request and what's important to know, and also tools and techniques around language to not sort of drive any stress or fear in the body, and try and keep everything relaxed to help you through it. And actually, there was so much of the education provided by Zebra in their online birth education class that resonated and matched what the hypnobirthing knowledge was. Someone's woken up, a bit grumpy. Oh, there's a smile. There's a smile. He's got the teeth coming through right at the back, which are really, causing him some jip, bless him. So I would just want to now pretty much talk about the lead up. So obviously had all the scans, had all the checkups, and getting closer to the date. And basically we've then moved to the capital city. We're in the Airbnb opposite the hospital. And actually, if anybody's really interested in being in this specific hospital with this specific team, I'll also put up a link to the Airbnb that we stayed in that's really close by. This lovely lady's got a few properties in that area. So although it's not the nicest part of the city, to be fair, it was winter, it was cold, we didn't have to go out much other than just to get shopping. So we really kind of hunkered down, hibernated in this space. I went for a few walks and things, but it isn't a nice part of Sofia, but it was close to the hospital, and that was what was really important for us. So we're living in Sofia, going across to the hospital for, I think at this point they wanted to see me every day for checking the fetal heartbeat, etc. So we were just in close contact, and in some of my scans, they were concerned Hudson was, I think, a bit small compared to where he should be. At some point, there was a bit of an issue maybe with blood getting through the cord. There was a few kind of things that obviously as a first-time mum worry you, and then looking back, you realise it's nothing to worry about. So, but it felt good to be close to the hospital, but because of the things that they were saying, they kept pushing back his due date. Originally it was like the 2nd of January, then it was the 7th, and then they were now beginning to say around the 20th of January, and that didn't work with the date. So I kind of took that as whatever and resigned myself to just relax and see what will be. Top tips for people, midwives tales old wives tales that totally worked for me was the raspberry leaf tea and the 6 dates a day for sure, because this little man came on the 30th of December. So really nearly 2 weeks, a week early from his officially due date from the start, but quite considerably earlier considering on the new dates they were giving me based on the scans. So I would say the dates did that for sure, and lots of walking. So I don't want to go in too much detail about the birth. I will share a couple of lovely images that we had, but the ladies were wonderful and I had a fantastic experience. Everything was natural, no pain relief whatsoever. I'm a pro. And to be fair, they actually don't even do in Bulgaria. What's the thing you take? My mind's gone blank. Baby brain. Gas and air. They don't do gas and air. The only pain relief you can get is epidural. And I was absolutely convinced that I did not want an epidural more than anything else in the world. In fact, I was more frightened of an epidural than the birth. When it came to the birth, yes, I was asking for one, but they managed to convince me that I didn't need it and I could go on. And that was what was really lovely about them. They really coached me a lot, helped supported me with different movements throughout the birth. Because there's one thing that always worried me from a lot of the education is when you're in a hospital, you're kind of on a clock. If you don't progress within a certain amount of time, they might look to start things moving for you, and that's really what I didn't want. I wanted to make sure it all just happened when it was meant to. So I was kind of in my head a little bit conscious, like, you know, is it happening quick enough? Are they going to start juicing me and all of these things? Another thing to note as well, Bulgaria sort of only allow you to go a week overdue before they'll induce you, and that was another thing that I really didn't want to happen. So I had a little bit of stress about that before the birth, as in I really didn't want to get induced, and I didn't want them to, I mean, nicking back my rights. You know, of course you can discuss with them if you want to keep waiting, and that's really down to you and the doctors and that relationship. So I just didn't want to go down that route of any awkward conversations, but luckily he came early and he came naturally, so I'm really grateful that everything worked really how I wanted it to. So I think a lot of positive energy was put into that, and my goodness, relaxation helps. Every night I would listen to something, and I think maybe all those things put together really helped it all lead to where I wanted it to go. So then he was born, and then really at that point it's really nice because they really focused on me. Now, a lot of the scare stories I've heard from other hospitals, maybe public hospitals, is that there's so much care on the baby that the mothers get ignored, and that's something that's over the years of hospital-led births has kind of taken forefront. Obviously the baby's important, but so is the mother. And I really felt so incredibly looked after. So you have, once the baby's born, the things that they ensure they do with you, unless there's an emergency, the way you or the baby are in danger, they 100% allow instant skin-to-skin contact. They do the delayed cord clamping. They allow the father as well to be in the room and be present, and once all that's happened and they're happy, the paediatrician will have the baby for a small checkup and a weigh, etc. And then this is when the obstetrician will look at you, take care of you if you need any stitches. And really, I felt from that point there was so much care around me and so much care around Hudson. So Lee was allowed to go with Hudson, with the paediatrician, so at no point was the baby without one of us. We opted to do the vitamin K as a drop and not an injection, which is an option there you can do. And if injections are some things, they can inject them while they're there. With the first couple that are for newborns, we chose not to do it at that time. That's absolutely fine. The hospital respect your wishes. You just have to put things like that in writing beforehand in your birthing plan. So he was checked over and weighed, etc., and then brought back to me, and we were taken to our room, and they wanted us in for 3 days afterwards. So this is standard. They want you in for 3 nights. I was so desperate to leave and go back to the flat. I really didn't want to be there. I've always been a bit scared of hospitals, but there was no bad experience. But it would have just been nice to have been home in your own bed. But actually, it was really nice also to be there, to be allowed just to sleep, to stay with him, to connect, to try breastfeeding. They were very supportive in ensuring that was connecting and working and supporting with that. The hospital was giving me cooked meals, which perhaps I maybe wouldn't have had them at home. Good old Lee, takeaways maybe. Bless him. But they were checking up on me every day. They were washing the baby for me. It was funny because you take everything to the hospital. Everything, don't you, in preparation. Your bag full of clothes, full of this, full of that, for the baby, nappies. They provided everything. And I mean everything. They provided all of the nappies for him. They provided all the clothes. They had all the postpartum support for me in regards to sort of pads and knickers and all those things. So really, you really didn't have to go with anything, which is a bit unlike the UK. My understanding in the UK is you've got to take a lot of that yourself. A couple of things there that I obviously was a bit funny about him. I only wanted him to be wearing white for his first few days, and the nurses on the ward kept putting him in their own little blue outfits and not the outfits that I had for him. So I was at the time I was a bit like, oh, but I wanted his first pictures in this outfit and things like that. But actually it all just goes by the wayside in the end, because they were so lovely, and the care they had around Hudson was beautiful. And they made such a fuss of us because we were the last baby in the ward of the year. So we were very special to them. We were also the only other couple with a baby in the ward. So we had extra special attention as well, which was nice. So the 3 days I was in the hospital, we were both checked every day. And the paediatrician finally gives the all clear that you're allowed to go. And then we went back a week later for a checkup as well. So the paediatrician checked over Hudson in regards to his weight and how he was getting on, and checking with the nappy situation, the feeding, and checked with the midwives as well. So really, I can't fault any of the care at all. Something else that they do at the hospital as well is help register the birth. So we did need certain amounts of paperwork with us. We had to obviously have passports, our residency cards. We also had to have our marriage certificate, proof of that. And the hospital did all the paperwork. They were so wonderful and brought a translator, someone in the hospital that could speak English, to help translate. So the Zebra Midwives group all spoke English. A lot of the younger staff members of the hospital spoke English, but some of the older paediatricians and registrars at the hospital didn't. So they always provided someone that could translate for us, which was extra kind of them to do so. We didn't have to do that. He's rolling his R's in the background. I can't do that. I'm so jealous that you can do that. But now they were wanting to inquire about the name, obviously, because they're going to send the paperwork off to the council to register his birth. Now in Bulgaria, the middle name of the child is always the father's name, so they were trying to put him down as Hudson Lee, and after Lee, and we kept saying no, we want his middle name to be XYZ. And they said, oh, well, we'll try, but the courts might contact you and you might have to pay a fine, or they may not allow it. And I was really, gosh, can you imagine not being allowed to name your child what you wanted to name them from a middle name perspective? And we were so worried, and we thought, they said, look, we'll send off the paperwork anyway and let's see what they come back with. You may have to get a lawyer and sort it out. And we were thinking, oh, great. But it all went through. Got his birth, about a month later, his birth certificate was sent to our local council in where we live. So we didn't have to return to the capital city where he was born to get the paperwork. They sent that all internally. We got his birth certificate, had it officially translated as well, which has been useful for, obviously, gaining his UK passport. Hold on. And the birth certificate came back with the middle name we wanted on it. So we didn't have to worry about any of that at all. So that was really good. Did you all hear that bottom burp from Hudson? You cheeky monkey, you did that on camera. It wasn't me, that was you, cheeky monkey. I know you're going to ask me about pricing. And basically, you're looking at, we paid around 3,200 leva. And that was for the hospital fees, the accommodation in the hospital, because you pay per night you stay. Probably one of the reasons why you have to stay so many nights, but it's part of their deal. And there's the fees for the midwife unit. And you probably want to also add on, maybe, I don't know, it depends if you're finding local accommodation as well. So we had to pay the Airbnb stuff. Now, if you pay into the social security system here in Bulgaria, you actually get a fund towards that. So it would have been about 1,200 leva off of that. But I hadn't been paying into the social security system, and it had to have been 12 months before birth. We weren't even living here then. So I had to pay full whack. So it's probably around £1,500, roughly, the cost of everything. In my experience, from what I had, totally worth it. Everything was provided for me. Now, I don't know if I said before about the postpartum stuff and all the baby wear and the nappies. I don't know if that's all provided in a local hospital or whether that was part of the private experience and the money you're paying there. So that's just some advice from this particular hospital, their fees, etc. So all in all, we had a great experience. The paperwork came to us really quickly, as in his birth certificate. Now, I did have another a friend who also gave birth in the same hospital with the same group of people, but she had a bit of a delay and issues with her paperwork. Now, I can't recall the problems that she had. It might have been because her and her partner weren't married. They had to get some special document sorted out with the notary, so they had to do an extra bit of running around. So make sure you chat, obviously, with your care provider about what paperwork's needed to get the baby registered. And then once you've got birth certificate and the UK passport, you can then register your baby with immigration. So now we're doing that process. It's a year later because we've been a bit slow at doing stuff. But then he can be an official resident of Bulgaria. One thing to note is, obviously, when you're born in Bulgaria, it doesn't mean you're automatically a Bulgarian citizen. He's an English citizen because of myself and Lee being English. But after 5 years, he can apply for citizenship, so he will have dual nationality, which is really great for his future, on the basis that he could potentially live in anywhere in Europe and things, or study somewhere else, depending on what he wants to do. So yeah, I mean, looking back, it was obviously, negatives. Look at him, cheeky. Boo. Negatives are, we gave birth during the pandemic, and some of the hospital rules that won't necessarily apply potentially if you're doing the same thing. But Lee wasn't allowed in any scans, in any appointments, so he would drive all the way to drop me off in the capital city after all that driving and not be allowed to be part of them. So that is something we won't get back, which was a shame. But he was allowed in the birth. He was allowed to stay up to 4 hours after the birth, but then he wasn't allowed to be in the hospital after that. So He was allowed. They were really lenient with us because we were the only couple in the ward, and they allowed him to stay in. Over the next few days, he was allowed to come in and eat a meal with me, and they said he could sleep there if he wanted to. And but actually, their protocols were he wasn't even allowed to come in and visit in those days. So that was all a bit stressful at the time, but it all worked out well due to the wonderful leniency of the staff, because of the fact that we were the only couple family in there. So that was a negative. Another negative was about how long I had to stay in hospital afterwards, which is standard protocol. And, you know, with hindsight, maybe I could have just signed myself out, but listen to him. But, you know, these things happen. You go with what you're recommended, don't you? And obviously being apart from family is the biggest, hardest challenge, but that's a decision we've made to do it all here, and obviously for obvious reasons, as you've seen in our other videos, is why we want to be here and bring him up in this lovely country. So I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry if it's just been me rambling on in this video. I really would love if anybody has any questions or any extra experience to add in the comments that they want to share with other people watching this video. It could be there's lots of things I've missed or wasn't aware of. If anybody wants more detail around anything, I can share everything. I don't mind. Maybe not on YouTube, but if anybody wants some questions about the birth, then please send me an email. I'll happily share as much information as I can. And I really just want to put your mind at rest that it's not scary doing it in a foreign country. I really highly recommend Zebra Midwives and the team at St. Sophia Hospital. But please don't be put off doing it anywhere else. I know there's other private hospitals in the country as well. And I think that's probably it, because he's not going to let me talk for too long. We need to play. Don't we? We need to play.